Well, we are glad that you are joining us on Open Line. I'm Chuck Long here with Kevin Kennedy from the Kennedy Law Firm. Kevin is answering your legal questions. There's something about, just the period we're in. We're in times, obviously, everybody is aware that we've never been in. And I think the anxiety levels particularly high.
Yes.
And it's why a show like this, and Kevin, I think it's really cathartic when people can just call in, because I think sometimes we toss and turn thinking about so many things. Legal questions probably. People are getting a lot of great answers from you this evening.
Thank you. Anxiety is real. Road rage is intense. Aggravation, frustration. Can I go on? And if you could just discuss some of these things, you say, well, I feel so much better now that I've talked to you. And that's where we do get a lot of gratification on sharing these things and stress and anxiety off.
Absolutely does.
So we're glad to do it.
If you do have one of those questions, make sure that you do get online with us. If you're just, like I said, Kevin, one of the top lawyers in the state of Tennessee, in business for over 35 years. Another thing, Kevin, I wanted, before we get back to the phone lines, people often say you have such a broad knowledge, which you do, of the law. One of the things that's so impressive about your law firm is you have so many experts in so many different areas. So if somebody calls you, there's somebody in your law firm that can help them.
Yeah. Right. I love, society. So you said, well, I can do this. Well, I said, you can do that, but you didn't realize you've created a problem with a bankruptcy. Well, I didn't know they could. I said, oh, yes, then you can get sued as a civil problem. And if you say the wrong thing, Chuck, you expose yourself to criminal. You can't threaten to have someone put in jail because that's extortion if you don't do this. So that's why you really need a lawyer to say, I wouldn't do that. Don't breach the peace. Is it civil? Is it criminal? There's a ton of books in the library, and lawyers dance in the air. What a construction pro. He said, now, Mr. Kennedy, what are you going to do? He said, who's going to win this case? I said, well, it all depends on which side we've got to get on, because everybody has their. You have to protect yourself, your family, your company, and if you don't, you won't be there forever. They'll remove you. So all this is just really helpful. Everybody that's around you. Knowledgeable people is what we want.
Absolutely. All right, we are going back to our lines right now. We appreciate you calling in this evening. And Tanya is on the line with us. Tanya, good evening. And do you have a question for Kevin?
Yes. My question is, so I got hurt on the job. I had to be on workers' comp. The doctor had me going to physical therapy. Is my able to pay me while I'm going to physical therapy or not?
Okay, here's the deal. Workers' comp in Tennessee is already mandated by state law. If you work for an employer and they determine that you fall within the Tennessee workers' comp laws, then everything is dictated by law. Can they break the law? Do they breach the law? Can they say, we're not going to honor that? Yeah. Responsible. And, we have people come in and say, well, as soon as I make a claim, they're going to fire me. Well, we call that in Tennessee a retaliatory discharge. And I see quite a few businesses that don't want to pay, don't want to honor what the public policy is, and so they'll have to pay in the long run. If it's determined that it's not a workers' comp case, then those employers are wide open to be sued. So if something happened and you were injured, try to play along with the rules, see their doctors, and many times you got to get a second opinion. But the workers' comp laws, remember, is dictated by the legislature. The laws, are they written for the industry or are they written for the worker? You got to think about that. And so a few years ago, they did tort reform and they've taken workers' rights away. Of course, Tennessee, because we've got friendly workers' comp laws, but it's not really always in the benefit of the worker. There's a balancing act that must, but remember this, tort reform, when it comes, it's never in the working man's benefit. Thank you for that. And you can, one other thing, there's the Tennessee Workers' Comp Division under the state of Tennessee. Call them, tell them your circle violation.
All right, great advice, Kevin. Tanya, I think that's going to help you, so we appreciate you calling in this evening. And, once again, Kevin, it's a perfect example of one of the reasons that people need lawyers. The law is complicated. I mean, in explaining that, you realize how many ins and outs that the common everyday person, they're just not aware of.
What else is interesting, Chuck? We have some really high-paid people that fall under workers' comp. And so you would say, well, they always think about just a guy working on the line and he broke his arm or he has to have a torn rotator cuff. When we get into these disputes, if it's repetitive motions, and I've worked there 20, and we're doing this, I think your lawyer can make a real good argument that was done on the job. And so as a result, is that absolutely, we have to fit inside the chart and move forward.
All right, we don't have a lot of time left. If you do have a question, make sure you get online with us as quickly as possible. We are going back to the lines right now, though. And we're glad you've joined us this evening. Do you have a question or a comment for Kevin? Can you hear us, Ann? Ann, are you able to hear us? Well, I think Ann, if you called, you can call right back, but if you can, do it quickly because we are nearing the end of the show. Kevin, one of the things, too, when we've, been often talking about what you should and shouldn't do, a lot of times, like, for example, even in a traffic, the policemen, they ask me this or they ask me that. The one thing you have to be careful about is what you answer and do you answer.
Yeah, the real world is when I talk to the police now, I'm all the time, and I love the police. They're going to be. And so we have many young officers. What does that mean, Mr. Kennedy? Well, they may not have had enough training. So again, but they're all trained. They have this little recorder. So when you start talking, as soon as they engage the public, they have to turn on their recorder. Now, the citizens are at a disadvantage because we don't have a recorder. And that recording is going to be used against you. This too, every time they ever do a stop, I'm going to check you for DUI, they move you to the front of the police. You know why they do that? Because there is a camera there documenting everything to be used against you. You've heard me say it a million times. Loose lips sink. Very careful on what you say. The insurance companies tell you when you have a car wreck, don't get out and say, oh, this is all my fault. They may even try to dance around and say, you said this and we're not going to cover you. I want to encourage everybody to try to talk. Don't just buy the insurance. Talk to your agent. Let them represent. Ask a few, what is my coverage? Do I have uninsured motorists? Police officer, do I talk to the other side? And so I want to cooperate, but I am very, very careful, and I try to teach everybody. It's amazing all the people that work at the office. Training, what I'm teaching you, I train paralegals, I train interns, and I train lawyers and my children. Train the grandchildren. So you take these ideas and so the one thing in your mind is always be very hesitant before you start talking, because it will be interpreted, and it can be interpreted against you. That's where a skilled lawyer can say, you didn't understand the full question. Let me explain it. That's where a very skilled lawyer would take over.
Absolutely. Kevin, and we've got just under 2 minutes, but we did want to kind of give some helpful advice that people. One of the things, when people start determining, do they need a lawyer, do they not need a lawyer, one of the things that I've often heard you tell people, though, is regardless, make sure you start documenting. Make as much information as you can and keep it organized, keep it right there with you. You know where it is. Yes. Then you're able to go to that attorney and say, here's what's going on, and you've got all the documentation right there in front of you. What
really helps is when the client, we can get our chemistry. When I'd say, okay, I want photos this way, photos this way. So any angle that the other side comes, we've already. The more that I talk, the more you learn, the more that you and I have our chemistry one with another. It's a very smooth machine. We go over it. Why do we keep going over it? Repetition's the mother of success. What that means, we flush it out. When people hear me talk, they learn to think and talk like a lawyer. So what is it? It's TIME. some people say we call it the trial notebook. I said, well, do you have the accident report? Yes, miss. Do you have the photos? Yes. Do you have? Yes. So if you've got kids trained up and they want to go to work for a lawyer, let them learn to put these books together. And when I'm going to trial, I want the best paralegals with me. It brings confidence to me when I have a for one lawyer and he says yes sir, yes. And when I asked one of them, I said, have you got that research on that hearsay? Mr. Kennedy, I got you covered. In the heat of battle, you never know what they're going to throw at you. Beside me, that's a tough bunch to beat. I've said this for years. You show me a family that sticks together, they're a hard bunch to beat. And the truth is, when the other lawyers look at this lawyer, I know we're out of time, they will understand they're not going to run over us easy.
All right, masterclass in law. Once again, Kevin Kennedy, as always, such a pleasure to have you here. Great advice throughout the hour. We appreciate everyone who called in this evening. We're sorry we didn't get to all the calls, but make sure when you see us on Open Line, quickly as possible. Kevin, thanks again. We're going to take a short break.
Thank you.
When we come back, we'll tell you how to get in touch with the Kennedy Law Firm, so come on back with us.